My name is July. I'm 25 years old. Today I'm going to talk about the day that they blamed me for my family's company going under, so I stunned them all and bought it. It's a pleasure to have you here. Stay tuned until the end and tell me which city you're watching from. I want to know how far my story has gone. And click on like, subscribe and activate the bell so you don't miss the next stories here on the channel. They blamed me for my family's company going under. Not just in passing, not in whispers. They made it loud and clear. At every dinner, every phone call, every sideways glance. They told the neighbors, the church group, even the mailman. My own mother once said to me, "If you hadn't pushed your ideas so hard, we wouldn't be in this mess." I was 25. Young, sure, but not stupid. And definitely not guilty. But guilt has little to do with blame when your family needs a scapegoat. Our family company, Everett and Company, had been around for 3 generations. It started with my grandfather hand-sewing coats in a rented garage in 1958. By the time I was born, it had grown into a mid-sized clothing brand with local fame and national ambition. My father, Richard, took over in the late 90s. He was the kind of man who valued tradition over innovation. Stick to what we know, he'd always say, while ignoring the market, the numbers, the trends. When I joined the company after college, I came in full of ideas. Social media campaigns, sustainable fabrics, targeting younger demographics. I was passionate, maybe even too enthusiastic. But I wasn't reckless. Everything I proposed was backed by research, data, case studies. Still, I was the youngest. The daughter. The one who should learn first and talk later. At first, they humored me. Gave me a title with no power. Let me present in meetings that ended in eye rolls. But when sales began to drop and our overhead grew unbearable, my father looked for answers. He found them in my name. Your campaigns alienated our loyal customers. You spent money on trends no one asked for. You tried to change what didn't need changing. It didn't matter that the problem started years before I joined. That the supply chain contracts were outdated, the product line stale, the leadership stuck in 1995. None of that mattered. I had suggested influencer partnerships and Instagram ads. So clearly, I had sunk the ship. It all came to a head one Sunday night. My brother Michael called a family meeting. He was the golden child, older by 8 years, always in charge, always right. "We need to talk about July," he said, like I wasn't even in the room. My mother sat with arms crossed, lips thin. My father avoided my eyes. My sister-in-law, Claire, the snake in designer heels, looked smug. Michael continued. "You had your chance and you blew it. Your little experiments cost us our credibility. You took a respected brand and made it a joke." I remember the burn in my throat. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. But something inside me cracked. "You want me out?" I asked. Silence. Then my father spoke. "It's better if you take some time. Step away. Let us fix this." Fix what? The rot that had been eating away for decades? The arrogance? The fear of change? But I knew arguing was pointless. I nodded. I stood. I walked out of that room, and out of the company I had dreamed of leading one day. They didn't follow me. No one called. No one asked if I was okay. In their minds, they had cut out the infection. I rented a tiny studio apartment with no heating. I sold half my clothes. I found a job at a local print shop, laying out wedding invitations and menus. The hours were long, the pay was bad, but it was honest. I breathed for the first time in years. Every night, I lay in bed and replayed that meeting. The looks on their faces. The conviction in their voices. The betrayal. But I didn't stay broken. Not for long. I began reading again. Marketing case studies. Business turnarounds. I watched interviews with CEOs who started with nothing. I started to dream, quietly this time. No one to shoot my ideas down. No one to roll their eyes. That winter, I opened a Shopify store. Just a few products. Handmade scarves, recycled cotton shirts, custom prints. I used everything they told me not to. Instagram. TikTok. Hashtags. Influencers. The shop took off. Customers wrote to say they felt seen. They loved the transparency, the simplicity, the story. And so did I. Because it was mine. No one else could take the credit. Or the blame. But I never forgot. Not the words. Not the looks. Not the silence. Especially not what they took from me. And what they never saw coming. Because one day, I was going to take it back. And when I did, they wouldn't even see it coming. The hardest part wasn't starting over. It was being erased. After I left, it was like I never existed at Everett & Company. My name disappeared from the website. The marketing materials I'd created were taken down. The office I once worked in became storage. According to them, July Everett had never contributed a thing. And in some ways, maybe they needed that fiction to survive, to believe they had been right. But I remembered everything. I kept screenshots, archived my campaigns, saved emails with data and projections they had mocked. Not out of bitterness, not at first. Just as a reminder to myself. I had value, even if they refused to see it. I worked double shifts at the print shop. Spent my nights sewing samples and learning e-commerce basics. My Shopify store slowly turned into something more than a side project. Word spread. Orders increased. I learned how to handle inventory, customer service, returns. It was exhausting, but it was mine. The irony? The things that had supposedly ruined Everett & Company, online marketing, influencer partnerships, sustainable production, were now the pillars of my success. I didn't have millions, but I had enough to stop worrying about rent. Then one night, I saw a news article shared by someone from my old college. Everett & Company faces foreclosure amid mounting debts. I clicked it so fast my hand shook. There it was in black and white. The company my grandfather had built was crumbling. My father was quoted blaming market volatility and changing consumer habits. No mention of me. Of course. But I wasn't happy. Not then. There was no satisfaction in seeing something so important fall apart. Even if the people in charge had pushed me out. I still remembered the smell of my grandfather's workroom, the long tables, the rhythm of sewing machines. I loved that company. Or maybe I loved the memory of what it once was. I didn't tell anyone what I was thinking. I just kept building. Growing. 6 months later, I had a small team. 2 seamstresses, 1 part-time assistant, and a fulfillment partner. We weren't big, but we were agile. And profitable. One morning, while going through inventory costs, I got an idea. It started as a joke in my head. Then the joke turned into a possibility. Then a plan. I contacted a friend from business school, Noah. He was quiet, smart, and most importantly discreet. I told him I wanted to buy a company. Not under my name. Not directly. Just in pieces, silently, through legal structures that wouldn't raise alarms. You sure? He asked, brows raised. This isn't revenge, is it? No, I lied. It's opportunity. We started small. Buying debts from vendors Everett & Company hadn't paid. Then old inventory at auction. Then equipment. Every purchase put me closer. It took nearly a year, but we acquired over half the company's outstanding debt, through shell corporations, investor pools and blind LLCs. My name never came up. And then the opportunity came. Everett & Company couldn't pay its debts. The building was mortgaged, the assets frozen. The board was forced to consider buyouts. Noah called me on a Thursday afternoon. They're taking bids, he said. If you want it, now's the time. I sat alone at my kitchen table for a long time. My laptop was open. The proposal ready. But my hand hovered over the mouse. I wasn't scared. I was remembering. My mother's voice. You ruined everything. Michael's smug tone. Your experiments made us a joke. My father's silence as I walked out the door. I clicked send. The next week was a blur. Lawyers. Contracts. Negotiations. I stayed in the shadows, letting Noah handle everything. On paper, I was just another stakeholder. But behind the scenes, I read every line, reviewed every clause. I wasn't just buying a company. I was reclaiming something they said I never deserved. And they had no idea. Until the final meeting. The board expected a private equity group or a corporate investor. They sat in the same room where, years earlier, they'd told me I wasn't good enough. My father, older now, thinner. Michael, still cocky. Claire, visibly aged. My mother wasn't there. Noah presented the documents. The purchase was final. The company belonged to the new owner. She's here actually, Noah said. She wanted to say a few words. I stepped into the room. The silence was thick. Michael blinked. July. My father stood slowly. What is this? Claire's face drained of color. I bought it, I said simply. All of it. No theatrics. No speeches. Just the truth. My father sat back down. Michael looked between us, stunned. No one spoke. I walked to the table. Placed my hand flat on the wood I had once been told I wasn't worthy to sit at. You blamed me. You erased me. Now you'll watch me rebuild what you destroyed. I turned and walked out. Not because I was angry. Because I was free. What would you do if it were you? Tell me in the comments. And don't forget to like, subscribe and activate the bell to receive all notifications so you don't miss the next story. I thought reclaiming the company would feel like a finish line. It didn't. If anything, it felt like a blank page, and I wasn't sure I was ready to write on it yet. The building was a ghost of its former self. Empty cubicles, old machines still covered in dust, walls that echoed with conversations long gone. I walked the factory floor the day after the papers were signed. It smelled like old fabric and neglect. The sewing lines were abandoned, the offices gutted. Years of mismanagement had drained the life out of the place. But something stirred in me. Not nostalgia. Something fiercer. I remembered sitting in that corner office, being ignored in meetings, dismissed by Michael, undermined by Claire. I remembered my mother's expression of forced disappointment, like she never expected anything from me, and was proven right. I wasn't going to rebuild Everett and Company the way it was. I was going to bury it. I brought in contractors the next week. We stripped everything, the outdated signage, the outdated furniture, the dusty old portraits of executives who never listened. I didn't want to restore a memory. I wanted to create something new, with no trace of the people who pushed me out. The staff that remained, mostly warehouse and admin, were nervous. I called a meeting in the break room. There were only 11 of them left. I'm not here to fix the past, I said, standing where my father once gave his empty speeches. I'm here to build something that works. If you want to stay, great. If not, I'll understand. But there's no more pretending. No more blind loyalty. No more blaming people who weren't in charge. A woman named Rachel, who'd been in HR for 20 years, stepped forward after. I always knew they were wrong about you, she said quietly. I didn't reply. I wasn't ready to hear that. Not yet. Over the next few months, the transformation began. The brand name was changed. The website rebranded. I hired young designers, most of them women, many from communities my family would have never looked at. We focused on slow fashion, transparency, affordable pieces without compromising ethics. I made sure every garment carried a note. Made by hands that matter. Orders were slow at first. There was a lot of rebuilding trust, not just with customers but with myself. I second-guessed everything. I triple-checked budgets. I held my breath waiting for things to fall apart again. But they didn't. And then one evening I got a message. It was from Claire. We need to talk. It's about Michael. My first instinct was to delete it. But curiosity won. We met at a coffee shop near the old building. She looked exhausted, thinner, worn down. Not the polished socialite who once laughed when I was pushed out. He's suing Dad, she said. He's claiming the sale was fraudulent. That you tricked everyone. He's trying to get the assets frozen. I stared at her. And why are you telling me this? She looked ashamed. Because he's unhinged. He's blaming me too. Saying I should have stopped the buyout. I didn't know it would go this far. I kept my voice calm. It's already done. The sale was legal. I know. But he doesn't care. He's spiraling. And your father, he's sick. He doesn't even leave the house. They're turning on each other. I felt nothing. Not pity. Not joy. Just a quiet realization. The empire they protected so fiercely had devoured itself. Claire handed me a folder. Documents. Emails. Proof that Michael had moved funds out of the company during the worst of the debt crisis. Covering personal expenses, not business losses. She didn't say it out loud, but I knew. She was protecting herself. I took the folder. I didn't promise anything. But I knew I'd use it. Not to destroy them. To protect what I was building. Back at the office, I sat in the room that used to be Michael's. I thought of everything he had, the praise, the title, the trust, and how he squandered all of it. Not because of me. Because of himself. I didn't need revenge. Not anymore. But justice? That I could live with. It didn't take long for the lawsuit to land. Michael wasn't bluffing. Less than 2 weeks after my meeting with Claire, I was served at my office. A formal complaint alleging fraud, manipulation, and coercion related to the acquisition of Everett and Company. His claims were wild, filled with exaggerated timelines, half-truths, and desperate narratives. But I knew better than to underestimate him. Michael was a narcissist. And narcissists don't go down quietly. Noah and my legal team moved fast. We compiled every document, timestamped transaction, and legal record related to the purchase. Claire's folder turned out to be the key. Emails showing that Michael had redirected company funds, lied to board members, and used company credit for personal luxuries. But we didn't file a countersuit. Not yet. Let him speak first, Noah advised. He'll hang himself with his own rope. The stress came in waves. I'd be in the middle of approving fabric samples or responding to a customer email, and suddenly I'd remember. My own brother was trying to take everything from me. It wasn't about the company anymore. It was about erasing me. Again, I didn't tell my team the full details, only that we were dealing with legal noise from the past. They didn't need to worry. This wasn't their fight. It was mine. Meanwhile, we kept growing. Our new collection was being picked up by 2 small department stores. Influencers were tagging us daily. We got featured in a local magazine. Nothing huge, but steady. Real. Earned. Then came the hearing. It was a preliminary session to determine whether the case had grounds to proceed. Michael showed up with a polished lawyer and smug confidence. My father wasn't there. Claire sat in the back, avoiding everyone's eyes. Michael spoke like he was giving a press conference. Claimed I manipulated the company's downfall, that I conspired to acquire it through shell companies, that I used insider information. She used her proximity to the family to gain an unfair advantage, his lawyer said. This was premeditated sabotage. When it was our turn, my attorney calmly presented the timeline. The vendor debts we bought. The public auctions. The clean trail of transactions. Then he opened Claire's folder. Silence fell as the judge read over the documents. These show that the plaintiff misappropriated funds over a period of 8 months prior to the acquisition, he said. Is this accurate? Michael's lawyer tried to spin. Michael looked visibly shaken. We adjourned without a decision that day, but the damage was done. The judge ordered a financial audit. Michael would be under a microscope now. After the session, Claire approached me outside. Thank you for not naming me, she said. Her voice cracked. I know I was part of what happened. But I didn't know how to stop it. I didn't respond with kindness or cruelty. Just a nod. That was all I had left for her. Weeks passed. The audit uncovered more than even we expected. Lavish vacations paid with company funds. A secret slush account. My father was forced to testify, and when he did, he finally said the words I thought I'd never hear. July warned us. We didn't listen. That was our failure. He looked tired. Smaller than I remembered. I didn't feel triumph. I felt a quiet, aching sadness. They had thrown me out to protect something that was already broken. And now they had to live in the wreckage. Michael's case collapsed. The judge dismissed it in full and sanctioned him for filing in bad faith. My legal team offered to settle for damages, but I declined. I didn't want $1 of his mess. I just wanted it over. And it was. For the first time in years, I slept without grinding my teeth. I went to work without bracing for attack. I smiled and meant it. But then a letter arrived. Handwritten. No return address. Inside a single line. You may have the company, but we will never forgive you. I stared at the paper for a long time. And then I burned it. Not in anger. In release. The letter didn't shake me. Not in the way they probably hoped it would. If anything, it reminded me that some people only know how to hurt. Even when there's nothing left to win. Even when the fight is over. I didn't respond. I didn't mention it to anyone at work. I folded that memory into the same drawer where I'd tucked all the others. The dismissive glances, the condescending laughs, the quiet betrayals. That drawer was closed now. Locked. And my life had moved forward. The company, my company, was thriving. We had expanded our line, added a men's basics collection, and were in talks with a boutique in Portland. It was still surreal sometimes. To walk into that building each morning and know that no one was waiting to silence me. That my decisions mattered. That I was finally heard. I started hosting team lunches on Fridays. Just something simple, pizza or sandwiches in the break room. But it became tradition. We laughed. We shared ideas. We listened to each other. One Friday, Rachel pulled me aside after lunch. She was holding a photo. It was of my grandfather, standing in the original workshop. Behind him, a young me, maybe 5 years old, playing with thread on the floor. I found this when we were cleaning out the archives, she said, her voice soft. Thought you'd want it. I stared at it. The man who started it all. The only one who ever looked at me like I could lead. Thank you, I said. And meant it. That night, I placed the photo on my desk. Not as a tribute to the past, but as a reminder. This began with him. But it would continue with me. A few weeks later, I received an email. Subject line, request for meeting, Richard Everett. My father. I stared at the screen for a long time. The message was brief. He wanted to meet. Said he had something to say. No apology. No context. Just a request. I almost ignored it. But something told me not to. We met at a quiet cafe on the edge of town. Neutral ground. He looked smaller than I remembered. Not just physically, though age had clearly caught up with him, but emotionally. Like the weight of everything had finally pressed him down. You look well, he said. Eyes not quite meeting mine. I am. Silence stretched between us. I know I wasn't fair to you, he finally said. None of us were. I waited. I wanted to see where this would go. I believed Michael because I didn't want to believe the truth. That we'd failed. That the world changed and we didn't. It was easier to blame you. He rubbed his hands together, eyes fixed on the table. I'm not asking for anything, he added. I needed to say that. Before it's too late. I nodded. Thank you for saying it. We didn't hug. We didn't cry. It wasn't that kind of reunion. But something shifted. A thread pulled loose. As I stood to leave, he reached into his coat and handed me a small box. Your grandfather wanted you to have this. He told me that years ago. I didn't give it to you then. I wasn't ready. Inside was a gold thimble. Simple. Worn from use. Engraved with his initials. He said you'd understand the weight of it, my father said. And I did. Because it wasn't just a tool. It was a symbol. Of work. Of legacy. Of something passed down, not taken. Back at the office, I placed the thimble next to the photo. 2 pieces of the past. Quiet. Solid. And mine finally, on my terms. There was no celebration. No big announcement. No press release. Just a quiet afternoon in late spring when I realized I didn't feel like I was proving anything anymore. I wasn't working to be seen. I wasn't chasing approval. I wasn't angry. I was simply free. The company had stabilized. Sales were strong. We had loyal customers, a growing online community, and most importantly, a team that trusted each other. We weren't chasing trends. We were building something that lasted. It was exactly what I had hoped for when I first walked into Everett and Company all those years ago. Full of ideas and heart. Back when I thought being part of a family meant having a voice. I was wrong then. But I wasn't anymore. On a Monday morning, I walked into what used to be the boardroom. It had been redesigned. Light wood, warm colors, no oversized chairs or intimidating tables. Just a space for conversation. I sat at the head. Not because I needed to, but because I had earned it. Rachel walked in with 2 coffees. She placed one beside me and smiled. So, what's next? I sipped mine slowly. We're launching the mentorship program next quarter. Helping women re-entering the workforce. That was your idea from day one. It was, I said, smiling. A moment passed. Then she added, your father came by last week. Left an envelope. I raised an eyebrow. It's on your desk. I didn't open it. After the meeting, I found the envelope. Handwritten. My name in his unmistakable cursive. Inside a short note. You rebuilt what we destroyed. I don't know if I'll ever deserve forgiveness. But I'm proud of you, July. And a check. I stared at the amount. It wasn't symbolic. It was everything he had left. His retirement. His savings. There was no explanation. No request. I folded the check back into the envelope and locked it in my drawer. I didn't need the money. I didn't need anything from him. But the gesture? I accepted that. Weeks passed. The business continued to thrive. My brother faded into obscurity. Claire moved back to her hometown. My father sent short updates by mail, whether small memories, sometimes just a photo from his garden. And then one day, I received a call. He had passed in his sleep, peacefully, alone. I attended the funeral, quietly, sat in the back. I didn't speak. I didn't cry, but I was there. Not for him, for me. Afterward, I visited his house. The lawyer handling the estate handed me a box labeled July. Inside, old sketches, notes from my grandfather, letters I had written as a child, and at the bottom, a folder labeled Partnership Ideas July. All the proposals I had made when I worked at Everett and Company, all the ones they dismissed. He had kept them. I sat there for a long time, holding the pages. He hadn't seen me then. Not truly. But maybe eventually he had tried. Back at the office, I hosted our first mentorship circle. 10 women sat in a circle, notebooks open, eyes bright with the nervous energy of someone taking their first step. I introduced myself simply. My name is July. I know what it's like to be underestimated. I know what it's like to start over. And I'm here to tell you, it's possible. And it was. Because I wasn't the girl they pushed out anymore. I was the woman who walked back in, built something better, and left the door open behind her. Not for them. For those like me. The ones who were told they didn't belong. If you like stories like these, click like, subscribe, activate the bell and send it to someone you think will also like it.